Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Joao Fonseca is an ATP champion in Buenos Aires. He beats Francisco Cerundolo in the final. He does not take very long at all to take the next step in his career after a big result at the Australian Open, the first round win over Andrei Rublev, the Next Gen Championship at the tail end of last year. Fonseca, yet another splash, yet another step that cements his status as one of the, if not the preeminent, meteorically rising young stars in men's tennis. Is meteorically a word? Who's to say? But we're going to use it. Fonseca with a big win, and that's where we'll start on this week's Monday Match Analysis. A big week, I should say. We will also cover Humbert over Medjedovic in Marseille. Just an interesting final in the sense that there was a major tactical key that I think really decided the entire match. So I'll tell you what that is. We will end in Delray. Not as much in-depth analysis on the entirety of that match, but I don't even think the entirety of that match matters when you look at how the match ended. How the match ended from Davidovich Fokina up 5-2 in the third to Kecmanovic coming back to win. That is what matters more than anything when we look at the Delray final, where Kecmanovic captured his second career title. What stood out to me about Fonseca this week? That's an easy question. I was blown away and delighted to see the level of mental toughness that Fonseca put on display. And mental toughness is a term that gets thrown around a lot. I think it's important to define it, to make sure we're all on the same page about what even is mental toughness. Here's what it means to me. When I watch players and cover players, how do you react when bad things happen? Do you react well? Do you react poorly? Most people are somewhere in between. But to me, that is the defining characteristic of mental toughness. How do you react when bad things happen? Plenty of bad things happened in Joao Fonseca matches in Buenos Aires this week. He faced adversity time and time again. And let's start with the final real quick. He served for his first ever title on the ATP Tour 2 times. He got broken 2 times. And then he turned around and played a perfect second set tiebreak. Broken at 5-4, broken at 6-5, and he played a gem, an absolute beauty of a second set tiebreak. That's mental toughness. Semifinal against Gera. He served for it. He got broken. This time, he actually lost the second set after serving for that match. He turned around and he played a gem, a beauty of a third set. He won the third set 6-1 against Gera. And compare that with the tiebreak, which he won 7-1. So different, but also kind of the same. Let's go back to the quarterfinal. He played Mariano Navone. He was down 3-5 in the third set. One of the most physical matches he's probably ever played in his career. He was down 3-5 in the third. He had to save 2 match points. He saved them both very well, and he won the match with his back against the wall. We don't even need to, get into Federico Coria. He dropped the first set 6-2. He played a bad set. That was even an earlier match. So constantly, none of these matches were easy. And it's actually something that I pointed out after the Australian Open last year when I was looking at Fonseca's run at the Lexington Challenger and the Next Gen Finals or the Canberra Challenger at the start of this year. He's just blowing people out. And that's great. That shows a lot of talent. It shows he's an amazing player, but it doesn't really show his mental toughness. When I evaluate mental toughness, I want to see bad things happen. And how do you react? And there were also some subtleties. It's not just scoreline stuff. You can look at the fact that at 30 all, in one of the games where he served for the championship, There was a bad bounce. That's a tough pill to swallow. You can talk about how in 2 of those matches, he was facing a very rowdy Argentine crowd, facing an Argentine opponent. And you better believe that got under Alexander Zverev's skin a little bit. That got under Holger Rune's skin a little bit. Fonseca never once looked slightly bothered by the raucous environment that he was playing in. You can talk about the fact that he was ill coming into the week, which seems to be a common theme right now. Everybody is getting sick. Knock on wood. I've been good so far this flu season, but it has been biting everybody. That is another thing. Like, that's adversity. That's bad. How does he react? He does not care. At least he doesn't look like he cares. He does not go dark on himself and get negative, and he keeps on fighting. And that's what's allowing him to come through these situations like he did so many times this week. So that's what was amazing to me about the run. It wasn't, look, he's incredibly talented. We know that. But I've already seen that he has one of the biggest forehands, potentially the biggest forehand we've ever seen. Like, we've got that. We've checked that box. It takes a little bit more to be a great champion, and I think he showed a lot of qualities of a champion mentally this week in Buenos Aires. So I wanted to start with that. But physically, it was also the most impressive run of his career, the best effort physically of his career. Another thing that I talked about coming out of the Australian Open after he lost to Lorenzo Sonego in 5 sets is that Fonseca was 1-8 in matches that surpassed the 2-hour, 28-minute mark. He won in 2 hours, 36 minutes against Gera this week. He won in 2 hours, 54 minutes against Navone. And the Coria match went over 2 hours as well. So for him to win 3 long matches in 1 week, for him to win 2 matches over that 2.5-hour mark, which he has really struggled with, throughout his early career, those are good signs. Let's get into the tactical dynamics. Fonseca's serve really seemed to be jumping out of Cerundolo's strike zone on a consistent basis. Francisco had a lot of trouble protecting his contact points on the return of serve. Obviously, the ideal contact point for a tennis player, almost always somewhere between the hip and the shoulder. And so many of the things that we praise in a player, like heavy spin, incorporating height, keeping a slice low, attacking with width, attacking with pace, like it's all an effort just to disrupt contact points. You could look at tennis that way. And Fonseca was doing it on his serve with height because the thing was just jumping up. And I really like Fonseca's kick serve. I think it's a phenomenal kick serve, but I even feel like he's got almost like and I got to kind of look more into this. It almost seems like he's got a half slice, half kick that kind of rotates sort of diagonally as a hybrid. And it goes fast. He can hit it big, and it still gets a little bit of that jump up from the rotation, from the semblance of topspin that it has. And Fonseca is so dangerous following up his serve. What ends up happening when Cerundolo has the high contact points above his shoulder, he simply can't get the same heat on the ball. He's not going to be as precise. More of his returns are going to drop short. More of them are going to be slower, and they're going to give more time for Fonseca to operate on the +1. And that's where he's so dangerous, obviously following up the serve with big hitting. But there are a lot of resources beyond the big hitting that I like to point out, and arguably they were more important with Cerundolo returning from so deep. Francisco is way on the back fence. It might have actually helped Cerundolo if there was more space on this court. Maybe he could have moved even further back, and then maybe that would have allowed the ball to actually drop a little bit so that he could find his returns at a more comfortable height. But with Cerundolo still relatively really deep, Fonseca did mix in some other stuff that is effective against deep court position. He served and volleyed 4 times or more, and he trusted it enough to do it on a really big break point in the second set. Kick wide to Cerundolo's backhand, on the ad side. That's a great play for Joao, and it's going to be a great play for Joao against any righty who doesn't have a phenomenal backhand and is standing deep in the court. He also hit a big backhand drop shot off of the kick serve out wide on the ad side at love 15. First ball +1 backhand drop shot that was a beauty. And love 15 is a big spot. That's where you're going to go to plays that you trust. The most reliable one is probably the forehand inside in. And I know I'm focused on the ad side, but I do think the height of return, the contact point stuff that Francisco is having trouble with, I think that was an issue for him on both sides, on all serves. Thought there were some vulnerabilities on the backhand return for Cerundolo in general. Not necessarily that he missed a ton, but I just didn't think he was really getting enough quality on it to avoid getting attacked on these +1s. But as I was saying, the most reliable +1 is going to be the forehand inside in after Fonseca hits a wide serve on the ad side, where you have Fonseca's biggest strength, which is his forehand, right? His most muscular shot into open court on a down the line. So you take a little bit of time away. The ball travels to the other side faster when you go down the line without the difficulty in timing. Like there's more forgiveness in the timing when you're taking your forehand inside in as opposed to down the line off of a deuce side cross court. So the serve, I thought, was putting Fonseca into really good positions throughout the match. Can't really say the same about Cerundolo, who I thought was pretty competitive from the back of the court. These guys are great ball strikers. I thought it was a really fun match to watch in terms of baseline rallies, but I don't think Cerundolo's serve was as effective. And look at it statistically. Francisco won 53% of his first serves, and he won 64% on his second serve. That's a bad stat. That's a red flag of a stat. Even though the second serve number is good, if your first serve number is 11 percentage points lower than your second serve number, it pretty much means that your first serve isn't doing anything. Cerundolo's already getting outserved by Fonseca at 18 years old, and Joao's serve is only going to get better. For Francisco, the serve is his worst shot by far. It's the main thing, at least technically, that has held him back. And I've just been kind of waiting for that shot to improve. And he's also not the shortest guy, so he's got the height to do it. But this was a good example of kind of how it hurts him, because I thought Fonseca was able to come up with far more neutralizing returns. That said, nobody's going to necessarily rack up free points in these conditions. These guys are going to play a lot of neutral rallies, and they did. And when you get into the rallies, the forehands are going to decide many of them. Fonseca's big forehand weapon, Cerundolo's big forehand weapon. Well, whose was more effective? Whose was more reliable? I think Fonseca's was. I really do. Now, I was surprised to see at the end of the match, unforced errors. Fonseca on the forehand hit 19. Cerundolo on the forehand hit 20. Kind of blew my mind. I really thought there was going to be not a massive gap, but that's like a negligible difference. It didn't feel like that watching the match, which leads me to believe maybe it's about when the forehand errors came for Cerundolo. And it's going to sound like I'm getting negative on Francisco. Obviously, when it comes to consistency, the key is that this isn't happening to Fonseca, that he was able to keep it steady, that he was able to use his forehand as a moneymaker, as the primary damaging weapon off the ground, without making errors in bunches in service games, because that's what it really comes down to, right? I think the reason why I was so surprised to see the unforced error count so tight, and maybe it's because there's some subjectivity in the scoring, and maybe they made some calls on forced versus unforced that I wouldn't agree with, but I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason is Cerundolo had many service games where he made errors in bunches. Fonseca might have consistently made some forehand errors throughout the match. Maybe he had some return games where he made a lot of mistakes, but that's simply less costly. When I looked at it for Cerundolo, let's start with the first 2 points of the match. 2 forehand unforced errors to go down love 30. He gets broken in the first game of the match. He does break back at 3-all in the first set. This game went to deuce. I had 5 forehand unforced errors for Cerundolo. 4 of them in attack, 1 in neutral. That was the decisive break in the first set. In the second set, it's 2-all. Cerundolo gets broken in this game. I've got 3 forehand unforced errors. 2 in a row to finish the game, both from really solid winning positions. Both would have been uncontested winners if he made the ball. And it seemed like he was, he kind of overhit them. He overplayed them. His targets weren't as big as they could have been. He made back-to-back unforced errors to lose serve there. Now we know that he fought back in the second set, escaped a couple of times. Last thing I'll say is, after breaking to stay alive, the first point of the second set tiebreak was a Cerundolo forehand unforced error. And that's your tone setter. After, Fonseca just for a second time in a row failed to serve out his first ever title, that's the tone setter, first point. And I remember he was pretty far back behind the baseline and he missed the forehand in the net, which is always kind of a no-no. You want to play with more height from deep behind the baseline. But anyway, the majority of the rest of the tiebreak was just too good from Joao. His shot making was superior. He came up with more. He had, a great backhand down the line. He had a great running forehand cross court that was just phenomenal. He had just an enormous +1 forehand that was just obliterated into the middle of the court, but so much pace that Cerundolo couldn't handle it. He was solid. He was buttoned up. The tiebreak was just, again, a beauty, as I mentioned earlier. So those were the main 2 things I wanted to say. I'll just finish on Fonseca that every time I watch, I'm amazed by the power. I'm amazed by how easily he's able to do damage into big targets, how unplayable his shot making can be at times. But I'm also always reminded that there is more there. The fact that he's happy to come forward, the fact that he uses his backhand slice now pretty regularly, especially when defending, that he has developed a drop shot off both wings that he's not afraid to use. In this match, he even mixed up his return positions, which not all young players are comfortable doing. So really, really good. Cerundolo, surprisingly, only the second time playing Buenos Aires. He's made the final both times. He's lost in the final both times. Hopefully he gets over the hump. I'm not exactly sure why he hasn't appeared more at this event. That kind of surprised me to see. I might be forgetting some stuff, but yeah, hopefully he ends up kind of triumphing in his home country at some point. Buenos Aires, shout out to the environment. Incredible all week long. Really, really entertaining event. And obviously a great win by Francisco Cerundolo over Zverev in the semis. I think it was the semis, unless I'm misremembering. It's kind of a common theme, by the way. The finalists this week, Medjedovic beat Medvedev in the semis, and Davidovich Fokina had a win over Taylor Fritz, one of the biggest of his career. Obviously, on Monday Match Analysis, we talk about the final, but there were some really big wins this week by everyone who made the final, which you could say is like obvious and is always the case, but I feel like this week especially. So I want to go to Marseille. I want to go to Humbert over Medjedovic, but first, I want to tell you guys that I'm happy to say I partnered with Player Court. It is the fastest growing tennis community in the United States. They have been on the front lines of making tennis more accessible for years now. And it has turned into this incredible service for exactly the kind of people who I imagine consume this very show. If you need lessons from a coach, you can use their network to find a coach. If you just want a playing partner, matches, hitting, this is like a dating app for tennis. You can also unlock all you can get discounts. You can unlock discounts on gear. And you get access to incredible instructional content. They have really good coaches on the platform who do in-depth videos where if you play or you're just a fan, you're going to be able to learn a lot. All of this is part of becoming a Play Your Court member, which includes a satisfaction or your money back guaranteed after the first month. And if you use my link, you get 50% off your Play Your Court membership. That's my link, which will be in the description, will be in the pinned comment, playyourcourt.com/GillPlay. Moving on. Humbert over Medjedovic in Marseille. Humbert with another indoor hardcourt title in France. It is his fourth of that variety. It is his eighth overall. He's been playing really good tennis, honestly, for the last 6 months. And of course, another highlight on an indoor French hard court is the biggest French indoor hard event of them all, the Paris-Bercy Masters, where he made his biggest final. So 4 out of his 8 career titles are French indoor hard courts. He really has come out of his emotional shell, plays with a lot of fire when he plays in France now. And I've now got him easily in my top 3 home court advantage players. I've got Tiafoe at the U.S. Open, who has made 4 straight years quarterfinal or better, 2 semis. I've got Talon Griekspoor in the Netherlands, whether that be Hertogenbosch on the grass or Rotterdam on the indoor hard, even though it was a tough draw for him and a difficult loss in Rotterdam this year. I think Griekspoor is in there. And Humbert when he's indoors in France. Like, these are 3 guys, you just don't want to run into them in those particular conditions relative to what they do elsewhere. But I felt, as far as this final is concerned, backhand returns on second serve points was basically the entire match. The entire match was essentially decided by the second serve dynamic. Humbert missed a lot of first serves. We'll get into that towards the end of this analysis. That didn't matter. What mattered is Hamad could not handle the slice second serves, particularly into his backhand, at all. And that led to a very lopsided second serve stat line that I will tell you in a moment. I'm just going to pull it up. Medjedovic, 39% second serve points won, and Humbert, 67% second serve points won. How did Humbert win 67% behind his second serve? Usually those stats are heavily influenced by neutral rallies. Usually. That's not the case at all here. It wasn't the case that Medjedovic was getting Humbert's return back in, getting Humbert's second serve back in. They were playing neutral rallies, and Ugo was beating him from the back of the court. It's not what was happening here. Hamad was actually good in rallies. I think just as good as Humbert. He couldn't get into them. Not on the first serve, not on the second serve of his opponent. And this kept coming up in big moments. So let's just start with the big moments, and then we'll go heavy into stats that I talked to and had some consultation with. I don't know why I said it so weird like that. We'll get into some stats provided by Tennis Insights, the team at Tennis Viz. Medjedovic had a set point, 5-6, 30-40. Humbert hit a wide serve, second serve. Hamad missed the backhand return long. He kind of short-armed it. It looked uncomfortable. Didn't quite get that extension. Didn't quite finish like he would normally finish a backhand. It looked tight. Deuce, next point, second serve, in a Medjedovic's backhand, return, doesn't go on the court. It was a good spot on the second serve, but Medjedovic knew it was going there. He still couldn't put the return back. Next point, add in, just for good measure, second serve, slice out wide, Medjedovic backhand return, missed it. First set tiebreak. Medjedovic missed 4 backhand returns on 5 return points. 3 were second serves. And then there was one first serve return, which again, there's no shame in missing a first serve return. It's going to happen to everybody on tour. In these conditions against Humbert, you got to think it would happen to anybody at least 25% of the time. But Medjedovic literally guessed correctly, was waiting for the serve to come to his backhand. It did, and he didn't put the return in. So this is what was happening. For the match, Humbert hit 13 service winners on his second serve. And for Medjedovic, that means he made 61% of his second serve returns in. Medjedovic's average is 78%, and the tour average is 82%. And just in case it's not clear, that is the number for percent second serve returns in play. Medjedovic at 61% for this match, opposed to 78%, which is where he usually is at. He was not going after it. His second serve return speed on average was down. Usually it's 73 miles per hour. In this match, it was 69 miles per hour. So he was actually taking pace off of it. He still couldn't make it. Now, Humbert has a great second serve indoors. That's part of this. And it's unlike basically any second serve that Medjedovic is normally going to face. Usually he's going to face right-handers. Usually he's going to face less slicey serves. What makes Humbert's second serve, I think, so tricky, at least to attack, is that it has tons of left to right swing. Like it really moves left to right. It has that slider action. And it also stays really low in these conditions. Medjedovic is a big guy. I do think he struggles on the low backhand a little bit. He's got kind of a flat backhand. Sometimes it looks like he stands a little bit too tall on it. And these could all have been factors. Meanwhile, on the other end of the equation, Medjedovic, when he had to hit a second serve that lacked a little bit of quality, obviously with Humbert, it's just a totally different thing. It doesn't matter if you serve it to Ugo's forehand or his backhand. You're pretty much afraid either way with those short, compact swings that he keeps in the pocket, so good at taking the ball early on the rise and redirecting. At the end of the second set, Medjedovic started double faulting a lot. Most of them were going long. You could tell that he was made nervous by Humbert's aggressive second returning. And again, we'll go to some Tennis Insights numbers here. If you just look at, you take away the free points, and you just look at how often the server was having to defend behind their second serve. Well, Medjedovic was defending 16% of the time behind his second serve, and he double faulted at a rate of 17.9% for the match. So these are all points where he didn't even get to start at neutral. His second serve already put him either lost him the point outright with the double fault, or he was already defending. It's a large chunk of his second serve points. Humbert, he had to defend on only 8.3% of his second serve points, and he didn't double fault the whole match. Plus, he got all those free points. So that was the match. That was the match right there. I'll sum it up one more time. If Humbert had to hit a second serve, slice into Medjedovic's backhand, tons of free points. He was in no danger. He was going to be okay. If Medjedovic had to hit a second serve, he was going to get attacked. He was going to double fault a lot. Humbert was going to come up with some aggressive returns. He was in some trouble. The last thing about this match, I just want to take a moment to rail on first serve in percentage again. Can I just rail on it for a second? Humbert made 49% of his first serves in this match. Yet he was in no trouble on his serve. But the commentary, and I'm not picking on anybody here, this is typical. The commentary that I heard was very fixated on Humbert's first serve percentage. And I don't point this out to criticize. I point this out to engage in conversation about the sport. Let's break this down. Humbert had a decidedly favorable second serve dynamic. Decidedly favorable. And on the first serve, he had the opportunity to be incredibly deadly by looking to do maximum damage. Big pace, aggressive targets, close to the lines. Why would you, let's say, sacrifice that and raise your first serve percentage at the expense of damage? So essentially say, I'm going to get more first serves in. Why would you do that and allow yourself to get neutralized more often when you have the favorable second serve dynamic anyway? It wouldn't make any sense. You keep going after your first serve. If you make it, you basically automatically win the point because you're so deadly on it. If you miss it, you're fine. You're confident on these second serve points. You have something going for you that's working. And you're obviously not afraid of Medjedovic's backhand return. So you feel good about second serve points. So who cares that Humbert served 49% in this match? It doesn't matter. He did not serve badly. He served well. So I just want to make that point. Let's end on Davidovich Fokina losing 2 championship points. And Miomir Kecmanovic winning Delray Beach, second career title for Misha, who's always plays great this time of year. I always find him to be good in Australia, good in these American hardcourt events in February, and the best tennis of his life was at the Sunshine Double a couple of years back. As much as Kecmanovic is playing awesome, I'll get to him at the end. The big story here is Davidovich Fokina being on the doorstep of his first career title, up 5-2 in the third, and melting down for one of the most agonizing to watch, one of the most cruel losses you will ever see. You will ever see. For a guy in Davidovich Fokina who has suffered an unhealthy number of heartbreaking defeats due to finish line issues in his career, the scar tissue is already there. And what I think is so tough here is it's not as if Davidovich Fokina got somewhat close and then kind of collapsed because of nerve management and then fell apart. He actually got as close as you can possibly get. He held championship points and he did some good things. He did some good things. This first championship point that he had at 5-3 was like a 25-ish shot rally. And Fokina dug incredibly deep. He played some phenomenal defense. He was doing the things that got him in that winning position, which is, being really difficult to finish against, using his legs, staying consistent. And he had Kecmanovic's legs cooked in this point, went after a forehand down the line, and missed it by a sliver. Like a few millimeters. On the second championship point, it was a good first serve, a quick net approach by Kecmanovic, and Misha had a pretty routine forehand volley. He almost missed it, though. It hit the net tape and went in. Just to rub salt in the Davidovich Fokina wound, it hit the net tape and went over. So he was a couple of millimeters away, or, I'd say a few millimeters away on the first championship point. Net court on the second championship point. Kecmanovic holds serve. And by the way, I might have said 5-3, but the championship points, what were they at? I think they were at 5-3. I don't think I'm mistaken there. But I could be wrong. I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, they were at 5-3. Okay, next game. Now it's 4-5. Kecmanovic serving. And Foki goes up love 30. And at 4-5 love 30, ADF misses a return on the baseline. This one was even closer than the one on the first championship point. It was half a millimeter, if that's possible. It was half a millimeter, as close as it gets. And that was the start of Fokina losing 10 points in a row. This is where things fully went off the handle, where Davidovich Fokina could not make a ball. You could see his entire body was tight. His decision-making went out the window. He took on some pretty unreasonable risk at times. Like, he was a total emotional mess. Like, his mind was absolutely sabotaging him. But it took a while. Like, not only did he play those 2 championship points decently well, he also went up love 30 in his next return game, knocked on the door again, missed a return by just barely anything. Then he went off the deep end. Came alive after going 30 love down at 6-5, actually. But Kecmanovic held it together, stayed really steady. Kind of a rough error on the championship point by Davidovich Fokina. Missed by a lot on a forehand. And that was it. So I don't know, like, what could compare to this. The fact that he was 5-2 up, the fact that those championship points were so agonizing, and the fact that he had never won an ATP title, and the fact that he has such a long history of finish line issues. The only thing I could compare it to, I was thinking about this as it happened. Vanch tweeted this on Twitter as well. It's like the Munich Botic van de Zandschulp loss, Munich final against Rune. He was up 5-2. He had a couple of championship points. He was going for his first ATP title. That's the only comparison that I can think of. And hopefully, Davidovich Fokina is able to move on and, quicker than Botic, because that stuck with Botic for a long time. It lingered. And we'll see what happens with ADF. Hopefully he's able to take some positives and also learn some lessons about kind of the way he played this week, because I do think that there is a little bit more leaning on the court coverage and the athleticism. This is what I've always wanted Fokina to do. Kecmanovic can be an absolute machine on hard courts. He plays equal quality off of both wings. He takes the ball early. He uses the width of the court, and he doesn't make errors. And it's really difficult to deal with. So congrats to Miomir Kecmanovic. Shout out to Serbian tennis. What a week for Serbian tennis. Lajovic is playing well. You have Medjedovic playing extremely well. Jera made a semifinal. And obviously Kecmanovic, the winner in Delray Beach. That'll do it for this week's episode of Monday Match Analysis. But remember, I released a mailbag just yesterday, kind of later in the week than usual. I also have analysis on the Sinner situation, which most of you have probably seen. But the mailbag is a good one. Okay, we talk about, let's see, what are some? We talk about the Stefano Vukov suspension, Rybalkin as coach. We talk about recalibrating expectations or not for Holger Rune. We talk about the U.S. Open mixed doubles change, moving it to the week of qualifying, otherwise known as Fan Week. Ostapenko-Swiatek is a topic. Diego Schwartzman's retirement. And even the Belgium-Chile Davis Cup controversy, which is something that I had been trying to avoid talking about, but I couldn't avoid it any longer. So make sure you check out the mailbag. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.